G'day team, welcome to the U Project. Craig Anthony Harper reporting in for duty as I do on a daily basis here in one of Australia's favourite educational podcasts. We're growing rapidly. We're in the 600 episodes and we have had a lot of guests, Melissa, haven't we?
We have, yes.
From all over the world.
We have, but I'm pretty excited about this one.
I never get nervous. And last night I woke up 13 times like a kid waiting for Santa because Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is coming on the U Project. And I've had a crush on her for a decade and I've spoken to 1,000 people about her and her journey. Hi, Dr. Jill. How are you?
I am so happy to be with you, Craig. I just can't stand it. Melissa, nice to meet you too.
Lovely to meet you.
Where do we find you, Doc? What's your locale?
I'm in Indiana.
Oh, how's life in Indiana?
If you look at Lake Michigan, you probably all know where the lakes are. It points to where I live. It points to Indiana. Today, it's a gorgeous, glorious fall day. I have to say it's beautiful here.
When I was thinking about chatting to you, one of the things I try to do is I try to not sound like an interviewer because interviewers are boring and interviews are boring, some of them. But you know, my listeners like conversations, and I also try to avoid the cliche and the normal questions. But obviously, where most people met you in inverted commas is either with your TED Talk or your book, you know, My Stroke of Insight. And that's where I met you. And that's where I honestly clicked on that. What was that, 2007 or 8, that talk? Eight. And I clicked on that. I'm like, and I remember it came up in my feed. I went, yeah, you know, maybe, you know, when you're like, and then it's like when you try a meal and you're like, and it's the best meal you've ever had, or you go and see a film that you're not looking, because someone dragged you there and it's mind blowing. So that was your video, that was your presentation, that was your story for me. And I kind of thought, I don't want to just ask you to unpack that again, but I feel like I have to because, I don't know, we have about 12, 13,000 listeners a day at the moment. And I would dare say probably half of them haven't heard your story. So as much or as little as you can about your stroke, I feel like I'm asking you to open a door you've opened 1,000 times, but can you tell us about it? And I apologize in advance if you get sick of telling the story.
That's okay, because that gives people a real foundation. So I appreciate it. So I have a brother who's 18 months older than I am, who would eventually be diagnosed with schizophrenia. So ever since I was a little girl, I became really aware that my brother and I would have the exact same experience, but walk away feeling as though we had had a completely different experience. And that didn't make any sense to me because, you know, as children, we think we're all alike. So eventually I grew up to become a neuroanatomist, a brain scientist at Harvard, while my brother grew up to be diagnosed with the brain disorder schizophrenia. And so I was at Harvard Medical School teaching and performing research, and my focus was on how does our brain create our perception of reality? Because I wanted to understand biologically, my brother's the closest thing to me that exists in the universe, and yet we're very different in how we're organizing information. So it was like, be careful what you ask for. And so I woke up one day and I was experiencing a major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain. And over the course of 4 hours, I watched my own brain deteriorate through the eyes of a brain scientist who thinks in circuits and cells. And so I could actually watch my brain deteriorate circuit by circuit. So by the afternoon of the stroke, I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. I became a complete infant in a woman's body. And it took 8 years for me to recover using the skills of my right brain to recover the skills of my left brain. and took 8 years to recover. And that's when I gave the TED Talk, which takes people moment by moment through the experience of the stroke so that you can kind of gain your insights, your own insights into what's going on between these two beautiful hemispheres and what the experience felt like through the eyes of a scientist.
How much do you remember about those 4 hours? Like, is that really clear to you, or is it a recollection?
Well, I think it helps because I wrote it down.
Yeah.
When I could still remember it. And I wrote it down by going into a therapeutic environment with a Gestalt therapist for a weekend.
Wow.
And over the course of the weekend, I acted out the experience of the morning of the stroke. And then we could create linearity over what would happen naturally in normal linearity. And then we put language on that so that I could actually communicate it, because the thing about the right hemisphere is it doesn't have any language.
Yeah.
So, but it runs these videos and it's experiential of what does it feel like. So I can tell you, I can remember clearly what it felt like, but I have the linearity across time because as the left brain came back online after brain surgery, then I now regained those skill sets in order to be able to tell the whole story.
I love how you I love how you talk about the left brain coming back online. Could you give us a quick snapshot again? I know this is a really rudimentary question, but can you just give us a quick snapshot of the left brain and the right brain, their roles, what they do, just to give people who neuroanatomy is new to them, which it is to me, kind of. Well, just give us a snapshot of each.
Yeah. So the right hemisphere, so you have to consider, what am I as a living being? I am a collection of some 50 trillion molecular geniuses that have differentiated into different kinds of abilities. So some are visual cells, some are language cells, some are motor muscle cells, all this differentiation of this mass of cellular life. And so in the present moment experience, the right hemisphere has this consciousness of what is right here, right now. Get rid of the past, get rid of the future, get rid of the definition of me, the individual. And I really am an organic collection of cells capable of sensing, experience, energy coming in from the external world through my sensory systems, being organized in that right hemisphere as a right here, right now explosion of the present moment. So in the present moment, I'm connected to all that is. I don't have the boundaries of where I perceive myself to begin and end, because that kind of thing is going to be going on in the left hemisphere. So we are these massive energy, organic, cellular, physical beings in the right hemisphere, right here, right now, no boundaries, connected to all that is right here, right now. And then the left brain comes online and it differentiates that mass of energy into linearity of thinking. And it does that because a group of cells in the limbic emotional system of the left brain, we have two emotional systems, one in the present moment and one in the past and future. The cells of the left brain bring information in about the present moment. It immediately brings it in, steps out of the present moment, compares that new information to everything I've ever experienced in my past, and gives me a reason to push away in order to protect myself. So the left hemisphere steps out of the present moment, giving it a past and a future, giving us a linearity of time. A part of that is a group of cells in the left parietal region that defines the boundaries of where I begin and where I end, so that I know I begin and end at the level of my skin, which is not true at an energetic level, but it makes it so I can define me separate from you and all the other energy beings. And then I have language in my left hemisphere. And a part of the language is my ability to say, I am Jill Bolte Taylor. I'm separate from all the energy around, and I'm separate from you. So I become an individual, and all the information now streaming into my left hemisphere comes in through the filter of me, the individual. So the right hemisphere is about the open, expansive, collective whole in the present moment. And then the left brain comes in and says, I am an individual. I filter that through the individuality, and I have linearity of time. So those are going to be some of the fundamental differences between those two hemispheres.
I'm fanboying right now, Melissa.
I know, so am I.
I'm being transported in time, but with my left hemisphere, though, because my right can't, right? I'm going back to when I first watched that presentation. So because your left brain shut down, you had a hemorrhage in the left hemisphere of your brain. And I remember you talking about, this feeling of freedom and interconnectedness and having no words and all of that. I assume there was no fear.
No, there's no fear when you're connected to all that is, when you are the energy in the trees and the limbs and the air and the sun and the people, when you're everything, what is there for you to lose?
Yeah.
And fear comes in when me, the individual, I feel threatened. And so I know, in the present moment is a perfect moment. I mean, we have emergencies in the present moment. People show up in the present moment with their best selves. Now, then once the emergency's done, then they think back to it and they go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And that was horrible. And oh my God, what if it happens again? Oh my God, that's not good. But in the present moment, the right here, right now is a perfect moment. And we own our power of what we are as these magnificent collection of living being in the present moment. So no. Now it does have an alarm, alert. I don't feel safe. I mean, if I'm sitting right here and I see a bear come up over onto my deck and it's like coming toward me, I'm thinking I need to move right now, right? And because it's a right here, right now. But most of the fear and the pain from our past is in that left hemisphere emotional system that remembers I had a moment other than this one right here. I mean, just think about what it would take for a biological creature to even be able to have not just the present moment, but a year ago. And you can remember what you had for breakfast. Right? I mean, you can remember the significant days in your life. How does that happen? Well, it happens because we have this linearity across time. And if a threat comes in the present moment, let's say 20 years ago, there was a dog that bit me. And now every time I see a dog that looks like that dog, I go into alarm, alert, because 20 years ago, that kind of a dog bit me. Well, that's designed to save my life. So we have all these magnificent, beautiful cells that are specialized in the action that they perform. And every ability we have is because we have brain cells that do perform that function.
When you were having your stroke and you're in that space for hours and your left brain shutting down and you're just in this almost transcendent state of bliss and joy and all of those amazing things, that sounds like in our culture, that sounds like a spiritual experience.
Yeah,
was it?
Well, I think that becomes a language. You can say something, we can say the exact same thing, and I can use a scientific term and you can use a non-scientific term. Yeah. We're talking about the same experience, but you're comfortable with your language and I'm comfortable with my language. Would other people say I had a spiritual experience? Absolutely. That's what they would say if they're comfortable with that language. That's not what I said. What I said was I had the shutdown of the left hemisphere. Those skill sets and abilities shut down. And in the absence of those, this is what my experience of the present moment was like. Yes. And then I went through 8 years of recovery. So it's not like and a lot of people say, oh, that sounds like an LSD trip or psilocybin. And it's like, well, it might, except mine lasted for 8 years and I had to do a whole lot of work to recover my brain. So other than that, it was probably kind of the stimulation of the same circuitry.
Yeah. So interesting. what was that? We're going to talk about your book in a moment. Your new book is called Whole Brain Living, the Anatomy of Choice and the 4 Characters that Drive Our Life. Go and get that, everybody. In fact, buy a few. Christmas is coming up. Maybe buy 5. What was that 8-year journey of recovery like? I'm sure was it painful? Was it horrible? Was it joyful? Was it all of it?
I was so grateful simply to still be alive that for me, I never bemoaned the fact that I went from being a Harvard professor teaching and performing research at the medical school to being a lump lying on a bed. I didn't die that day. And that's all that mattered to me. That's what was worth celebrating, was I was still here. And if I was still here, that meant I had new possibility. Now, my goal was never to recover the girl who I had been before. That girl, she died that day, as far as I was concerned. So I couldn't go back to that dream. But it was then a matter of, okay, well, who's going to emerge now? I'm still alive. I still have neurons. I still have neuroplasticity. I still have new connections. I still have new possibility and ability. So what do I need to do in order to recover? And what do I actually want to focus on in order to recover? So it was a lot of hard work. And it was a constant inside of my brain of how do I take care of these magnificent cells and protect them so that they can have their top performance.
And what do you know now that you didn't know pre-stroke? Has the way that you see you changed, the way that you see the world, the way that you do life, for want of a better term? Has that changed drastically?
Drastically. I know that our number one job in life is to love one another.
Wow.
Period. Yeah. Our number one job in life is to love one another. And if I'm coming into the world in my pain, then I'm not loving you. And if you're in your pain and you scare me away, I'm not loving you. But if you're in your pain and I show up in my love and I can say, I can hold the space, because really pain is a lack of neuroregulation. And if we're deregulated in that alarm, alert, I don't feel safe, then the love of another human being can stand next to us and connect with us. And even at just an energetic level, calm our energy back down and help us re-regulate ourselves back into our normal, peaceful way of being. I truly believe that our number one job is to love one another. And at the core of our being, each and every one of us, is that part of our brain that resonates as peaceful euphoria. So how do we get into that, and how do we work with one another in order to find that space? And I didn't have that before.
Yeah, I love that. What about, excuse me, before we talk about your book, I just want to ask, I'm fascinated with where we humans get our sense of self from, our identity. And quite often we get our identity from all things external, my brand, my business, my reputation, my profile, my academic credibility, my house, my car, my things. Right. Tell us a little bit about the self, the me, the I.
Well, if you have these 2 hemispheres, and the left brain is all about the focus of the me, the individual. I'm separate from the external. And I have to be an individual in order to become a functional human being. I mean, we just have to have some level of individuation, right? So, but with that comes the value structure based around me as the center of the universe, which means my brand, my house, my car, my status, my this, my that, my, me, and mine, and my team and my whatever, right? And so that becomes, in our society, which is skewed to the value structure of the left hemisphere, that's what's going on. It's all about the me and the mine and the I. But if we shift away from that and we recognize the only way for me to truly thrive for it, so let's say it this way. The right hemisphere doesn't have the me, the I. It doesn't have the individual. It has we, the collective whole. And we, the collective whole, is not made up of you and you and you and you and you and all the listeners all together as one thing, like a cellular body is. It's about more like the ocean, and we're all drops that go back to being a one, All right. We're not pieces of the one. We are the one. It's kind of like, are you a Trekkie? Are you a Trekkie kind of guy? You remember the Borg?
No. No, I was never really a sci-fi dude, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so the Borg queen essentially was this, everybody was dissolved back into one level of consciousness who could all hear the queen's thoughts. It was all one thought. And so she essentially had all these arms and hands and legs and all these bodies that could go out and do something. And if you chop one off, it didn't matter because the whole was still whole. But in the consciousness of the right brain, we are one collective whole. We're a human family. We're one thing, and we are in relation to one sun and to one planet and one humanity, and we have this relationship. And the right hemisphere is all about how do we nurture this relationship, because if we don't have a planet, it doesn't matter how much money we've got. I mean, we're all dead. So at one point, you got to have the two hemispheres working together and saying, how can I come from the value structure of my right brain that says we are a collective whole and we all contribute to the benefits of all of us as equal life forms, ultimately becoming humanity as individuals and doing what we can do as individuals in order to make the collective whole healthy.
We talk in metacognitive terms of thinking about thinking. Is that actually like, can we analyze our own thoughts? Can we? Yeah. Okay. Can we regulate? Is the way that we think set, or can we manipulate that for better over time?
So I think that a better way of looking at it, or a different way of looking at it, is to say, I have multiple ways of thinking. And the thing about neurons is their behavior is very predictable. The more you run a circuit, the stronger that circuit becomes, and eventually it runs on automatic. So it becomes a habitual thought pattern, right? And so if I spend a lot of time in my anger, then it's like my little trigger's right out there, and all you got to do is pounce on it, and I'm mad and bouncing, and I spend a lot of time being angry. So my anger circuit becomes my automatic response to be having stimulation coming at me. But then I could say, okay, I don't like the way anger feels inside of my body, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to pull that trigger down. And every time those people who I know who like to jump on my trigger come in, and I can watch them trying to jump on my trigger and make me angry, because when I'm angry, they have the upper hand. I lose my control. I'm now bottom man. I feel like I'm top man because I'm big and ugly and mean, but I'm not. I just got manipulated. They just won, right? So if I just start watching the people who like to come and make me angry, and it's like, I know you're trying to make me angry, and I'm just not there anymore. And as soon as I change the game of our relationship, we're going to have a new relationship, because then you're going to say, oh, well, I can't make her mad anymore. So I'm either going to avoid her, or I'm going to have to befriend her. Oh my God, what a concept. So whatever circuitry we run over and over again, and we can choose, how do we want to think? How do we want to be? What do we want to feel? How much time do we want to spend in these different parts of our brain that are performing these very predictable and specific functions?
Isn't it amazing that you came to understand the brain in a whole new, vastly different way when you weren't researching? When you had this moment where you understood the brain more through your experience than any dissection and any analysis you'd done.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd had the book knowledge, but it's one thing to say the right brain is like this and the left brain does this. And it's like, okay, well, what does that really mean? And so I got the experience. And so I don't bring any new science to science. What I bring is a personal experience through the eyes of a scientist who's trained in looking at the brain in the way it organizes itself at a cellular neuroanatomical level, what does it feel like to be in these different parts of the brain? And I didn't, I mean, it was what it was. I was the right girl in the right place with the right credentials, with the right background and the right impetus to hang on to my life. And then I recovered and boom, what have I learned?
Yeah. Well, you've learned a lot. And I think there's so much to be said. I don't know, sometimes we don't value experiential learning as much as academic learning, and I'm going through at the ripe old age of 58, Doc, going through my own academic journey, doing my own PhD. And it's interesting and it's fascinating, but I'm doing neuropsych. So understanding a lot about, behavior and how people are wired and all of those things, and psychology and impulses. But because I have a background working with elite athletes and the general public and having tens of thousands of conversations in my job as a coach and mentor and high performance coach and exercise scientist and all of those things, I learned so much in the process, at the coalface of connection and communication. And sometimes it doesn't translate to data and research in the academic sense, So for me, where I'm at right now, because I'm not an academic, I'm a pracademic. So I'm learning how to research properly. And so for me, I just held my arm up at a steep angle, everyone. It's a steep learning curve. So yeah, that space, I think, between experiential learning in the middle of life and learning in the middle of doing and learning in the middle of an experience versus something that you read. We need both, but I think that on-the-job experience is a much better teacher sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's when I experienced the stroke, I lost all my academic. I had to go back and relearn the names of the words, the terminology of my anatomy, of my physiology, of my biochemistry, of, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I could have sculpted for you an abdomen because I was a gross anatomist. And so I dissected human cadavers and I love the relational. So I had the relational and I could have sculpted, but I could not have named the three parts of the stomach because I lost that in the terminology end of the academia. So academia provides us a nice structure upon which we can build and place the experiential. But for me, the power is certainly in the combination. But if I had to lose one or the other, I would rather lose the academic because I can go back and learn that. School is designed to teach us that. In order to have the experience, you got to live life.
Yes, so true. All right. So your new best-selling book, New York Times bestseller, as was My Stroke of Insight. The new book is called Whole Brain Living: The Anatomy of Choice and the four characters that drive our life. Right. Do you like writing or is it laborious?
A part of me enjoys it. But I have to balance it with play. Yeah. Because I believe every sentence matters, and I always wrap it back to what's the point, which means that you have to hold the big picture in your brain when you write it. I would rather go paddleboarding than sit down and write. If you give me a choice. So I did both. When I wrote the book, it was during the pandemic. I was living on the water. I live on a boat in a beautiful cove. And so I would strap myself to that chair and write for 90 minutes. And then I would get up and I would go paddleboard for 40 minutes and I would eat something and go to the restroom and thank God I'm alive and live where I live and sit down for another 90 minutes. And I would do that 4 to 5 times a day. And it was very, very grilling and drilling and very productive. So I wrote the book. And then this year, I was out on the boat for 6 months doing podcasts. I've spoken on over 100 podcasts around the world from my boat. And between them, I would paddleboard and pray to the stars that I didn't fall in. Because podcasts now are half of them are visual, they're not just audio. Yeah. But now I feel like I have thrown all the seeds around the world and like a good farmer should. And I'm watching what's growing, and it's fascinating what's growing. It's growing in a way I never anticipated.
Yeah. Well, you're very unique. I mean, you're the same. You're one of 7.9 billion, but at the same time, you're unique. Your message and your story and your journey is just you. And I mean this with respect to all the guests we've had and all the people who are writing books but there's a lot of repetition out there, but your stuff is definitely so unique and so original and inspirational. All right, tell us a little bit, if you would, about the 4 characters that you define in the book, and just, if you can, without giving away the book, just tell us what you'd like to about that.
Yeah. So, after I gave the talk, it was really, it was amazing, the response. First of all, it was like a tsunami of energy hit my life when I gave that TED talk. And, but it didn't communicate the level of reverence for one another that I wanted it to instill in people. People were reverent of me, but they weren't reverent of one another. And it's like, well, that was a miss, right? Because I didn't need that. I'm in my right brain, big as the universe, but I want us to love one another. And so I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I couldn't figure out, how do I communicate that our number one job is to love one another? And I was giving a presentation. I said, I love talking about the brain right now at conferences, because people understand, they love brain language. They know about the amygdala and the hippocampi. But the fact of the matter is, we have 2 amygdala. And there was literally an audible gasp in the room. And that was the instant I knew, people don't understand. We have 2 emotional systems and we have 2 thinking brains. And if they understood these 4 specific modules of cells, the skill sets of what they do and how they manifest as a character inside of ourselves, and that they then have the power to choose moment by moment which of those 4 characters they want to be in any moment, now that's power. And so that's what whole brain living is about. It's an introduction to these 4 different groups of cells, the skill sets of each of those, what they feel like inside of our body. It trains you to look at your character 1, 2, 3, and 4 and answer a whole bunch of questions relative to that part of you. Get to know that part of you, because it's your anatomy. You already have these 4 characters. And it just so happens that these 4 characters can be overlaid by Carl Jung's 4 archetypes. Well, doesn't that make sense? So essentially, the conscious character, the rational thinking brain of the left hemisphere, and then characters 2, 3, and 4. 2 and 3 are going to be the 2 emotional systems, and then 4 will be that right thinking tissue that is connected to all that is. It doesn't have any language, but we all meditate to get to. We all pray to get to. We mantra to get to. We want that blissful euphoria, that sense of peacefulness. Well, how do I embody that? Well, it's easier when you know what that feels like inside of you and how to set yourself up for success. And then if you're feeling any kind of conflict, emotional conflict, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. We've all had those relationships, right? How is it I can love you so passionately, and as soon as you're mean to me, I hate you, right? It's because one of my hemispheres just loves you, and then the other hemisphere is giving me all the reasons why I hate you, right? So, there's a communication network of bringing all 4 characters into a communication system called the brain huddle. BRAIN becomes the acronym. And then it's like, well, how do I get all my whole brain in communication so that I can make the next best choice for my life and who I want to be and how I want to be? And do I have that power? Yes, we all have that power, and we can train ourselves to do it.
What gets in the way of love, Doc?
Fear. Push away. Yeah. Love is wide open. It's enveloping. It's connecting. Fear is push away and separate. Unfamiliar. I don't feel safe. Fear. And there's a different energetic in there. When we're anxious, when we're feeling fear, when you really stop to think, you look at all these professionals and you say, doctors and dentists and veterinarians really high on the scale of not satisfied with their jobs. Well, why is that? It's because we find true meaning in our lives when we love one another. If you're in pain and I can help you, I feel meaning in my life when I give you a hand and I lift you up and I try to support you and I offer you something. I'm bringing my love to you and saying, how can I help you? How can I connect with you? But if you're all about your fear and your pain and I push it away, then you're isolated. And then you are stewing in all that, and I'm off in my ego somewhere, and I'm stewing somewhere in that, and we're competing against one another and all those values of the left brain. It's just a completely different world than if we create a world of the right brain connection, experience of truly knowing. You might be on the other side of the planet, but the energetic movement that I'm making over here is influencing you and everybody in between.
That's why you're you. I wish I had more time and I wish I could write notes faster. Why do we pay? This is a bit left field, but you're super smart. And while I've got you, I'm just going to maximize it. Why do we pay so much attention to shit we can't control or change? Like, why do we invest so much energy in that which is out of our control?
We are functioning in such a immersed left brain society that is saying my value is based on external circumstances. What size is my house? How big is my paycheck? How many people do I influence? How many clicks am I getting on Facebook? Blah, blah, blah. The value of me is based on the external, which I have zero control over. And so ultimately, and it's never satisfied. It'll reach a goal and then it creates a new instinct goal. And so it's always chasing an even more of a goal. So it's always behind. And it's a perfectionist. It wants everything perfect. And world is messy. There is no control at that level. And that left brain wants to control people, places, and things and just have everything be perfect. And I always go for, give me a stained glass piece with a small crack in the glass. That's where the soul comes in. You know, give me a sculpture where, okay, the hair's a little too big. That's where the soul comes in. You know, give me that something that makes it unique and different. Allow it to be what it is without the negative judgment of that left brain. So we're chasing something that's impossible to win, which is the value of the left brain. The right brain is happy and peaceful and euphoric simply because we're alive, Craig. Simply because I'm alive. I mean, really, stop to think about it. Forget I'm a human. Forget I'm a woman. Forget all the details of my story. If I'm just sitting right here and I'm sitting in this mass that I call me, and I realize I can wiggle that toe way down there. And I have these two things that I can move so that I have mobility around. And I got these fingers, these digits that allow me to manipulate the space around me. And oh my God, I got eyes that can bring in the colors and the lights, and I can hear the sounds, and I can chew food, and I can taste all these tastes. And oh my gosh, I'm alive. Now, wow, to me, that's just the biggest wow of all, right? We should all wake up and just go into that. Oh my God, I'm alive. And the cells in my spinal cord, in my midbrain, in my brainstem that woke me up today, they actually woke me up today. I mean, come on, let's get real. What's important?
Yeah.
That is a gift that I can thank the trillions and trillions of cells that work together to allow me to simply be the living being that I am and say thank you, and then bring that gratitude into the world, and I will live a different life.
Yeah, we're going to leave it there. I could bang on forever, but I think that's a really nice way to finish. Dr. Jill's new book is called Whole Brain Living, The Anatomy of Choice, and the 4 characters that drive our life. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, we love your guts. You're amazing. If you stay on after the call for a moment, that'd be great. Thank you so much for being on the You Project.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks, everyone. Isn't she awesome? I told you. Love you guts. See you next time.